Good evening, everybody. It's Divided We Stand, Saturday night, May 13th, and we're still here, aren't we? But I do have some sad news to tell everybody, and that is this. Donald Trump was supposed to be in Iowa tonight to give a speech, and as you can see, the event has been postponed due to severe weather, and they're to proceed to the nearest exit there. So weather looks terrible there, doesn't it, folks? Hmm. What can I say? The man's a liar all the way through. Anyway, as I said, this is Divided We Stand. If you're new to this channel, we don't monetize, and we also have a group page on Facebook. We ask that you subscribe, and if you are a member of Facebook, please become a member of our group. It's the Facebook group page, pretty easy to find, and whatnot. You can also find us on Saturday nights on Twitter. This feed also goes to Facebook, and it goes to YouTube. So again, if you're new, please consider subscribing. If you like what you see, please share and give us a thumbs up. If not, give us a thumbs down. And speaking of thumbs down or thumbs up and whatever you do with your thumb, we have our wonderful co-host, and that would be our David Price. Dave, good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad to always be here. Hello to everyone who's listening or viewing and listening, I guess, at the same time.
Thousands of people tonight, Dave. Thousands.
Well, more than one.
Okay.
Because I'm not listening to you. I don't know who else would be. What I was going to say is I'm really glad to see, Brian, that you still are sporting a haircut that would fit in any Aryan nation group in America. Glad to see you're still a skinhead. Good thing.
Yeah, but I can't find. No, I told you it's very freeing for me not to have to deal with my hair any type of way. So
I think though, really for this show, if you're not going to do, I think we should get contributions coming in of chia seeds, so at least you have like a chia pet.
No, you wouldn't tell that to Yul Brynner, would you?
No. Well, I hope, Brian Weinstein, I knew Yul Brynner, and you're no Yul Brynner.
Okay. And why can't I get you in here? There we go.
Because there I am.
This is actually, Dave, as you know, Ecamm has a beta group, and they actually just, you're going to get pissed at me for this, but they actually posted an update, and right before I called you, I updated. You always tell me don't mess around with things before we go on.
Look, Brian, there's nothing if not consistent. Tonight, I think you mentioned you might have as many as 5 or 6 videos to show tonight. My projection is fewer than 25% of them will actually work, given your ability to handle.
The pressure's on. The pressure's on.
So, those at home, you can be keeping score. How many of Brian's videos actually come to fruition?
All right. I'm getting texts from Joe. He's mentioning his mohawk, or whoever's mohawk.
Veg, we're going to talk a lot about that, so I hope you comment on it.
Smelling a lily. Very, very nice indeed.
Do you have a cocaine problem or what? What's going on there?
No, they have this lily leaf or it smells so good.
Do you consciously wake up in the morning and say, what can I do to be weird and odd? Or is that
I don't even try.
Or is that something just comes naturally to you?
It's just me. I don't think the things through. I just am. That's what it is. So we're going to talk tonight, Dave. We're going to talk tonight about other things besides lilies, or you might see me do this from time to time.
Whack-a-doodle, that's all I can say.
Yeah. But we are going to talk about CNN, as the title suggests. This is our 167th show. And I guess the first thing I want to ask about CNN's town hall with Donald Trump, Dave, did you actually watch it?
I have never watched any thing with Donald Trump on it deliberately. After I saw him glide down that gold staircase a few years ago, because he just lies. So I wait till the next day, and then I pick it on YouTube. I pick it up through Washington Post, New York Times, and then wait for the commentary to see we know that Trump's going to lie, so why watch it? I mean, I really don't see. The only reason to watch it, and I mean, I don't want to wish ill of anyone, but the only reason to watch it is the event that somebody would try to assassinate him, or something would happen, and that's not going to with the crowd that CNN assembled. So I don't see any reason to watch it. Now, if somebody wants to watch it, that's fine. I know the argument. I need to be there. I need to hear it. I don't want anybody else to make up my mind for me. And if you're in that camp, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not. I have no interest in listening to him. I have no faith that he will say anything that even remotely resembles truth. He brings out everything that is worse, the worst of America, embodied in one man. So why would I watch him?
Right. And actually, I only watched for about 2 or 3 minutes. And of course, the next day I did watch. And
Right.
I mean, I had to critique it. And we're going to talk about it from a couple of different angles. I do think, at least I'd like to start with the viewpoint of Fox, because this thing was obviously a staged event for Trump. I mean, I don't know that CNN was trying to help him, but they, of course, did help him by doing this. But I want us to look first at how Fox decided to spin this event. So we're going to watch a little bit of this and see if you can make some commentary as we go through this video here. So let me get this thing set up. And this is entitled "Trump Broke CNN Last Night." I think CNN broke CNN last night, so to speak. All right, let's go to our scenes.
Can't hear you.
Dave, let's just hope everything goes well.
I've already said 5 videos. Best you're going to get is 2 out of 5 will work. This apparently is one that won't.
All right. Well, we're going to see it. It better work. Okay. So we'll take it in pieces and look at your commentary, which should be helpful, because I think it's really, really important to look at how Fox spins this, because this is basically how 75 million Trumpers watch this, and this is how the simplest of messages are quite effective, albeit they're just lies, just like the orange bastard. All right, so let's do what we got to do. Okay, and here we go.
Can't hear it, Brian.
All right, that's 1 strike against me.
I said.
Oh, hold on, let me see. System audio, sound effects.
How many shows have we done, Brian? Did you say 167?
All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Good
It takes
Lord.
a little bit of time here. Let's see.
Yeah, just click things, Brian. That might work. Click anything.
Can you hear me? Can you hear it?
No.
All right, let's try another one.
Yeah, so just click everything.
That's good.
Go down. They say chicken soup's good. Go down and make some chicken soup and throw it.
Let's try it now.
Maybe
How
that'll
about
help.
this?
Moderator and even got
No?
cheers
Got it.
from the audience.
Got it.
Okay.
We had no inflation. We had the lowest energy prices we've had in decades. This country was rocking and rolling. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours.
What is the first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable?
Drill, baby, drill. There's never been anything like is happening to our country right
You built
now.
about 52 miles of new wall. Miles of new wall.
Now, notice there, Dave, they're doing something really, really intelligent. Again, they're taking these little sound clips, sound bites of each particular topic, and because this is all these people can handle. Drill, baby, drill. Things we're rocking. Okay, we're keeping things simple. I'm gonna let you speak. Well, let me just start right there. What do you think? What you've heard so far? What they're trying to do? We know that it's idiocy.
Well, we say it every time. It bears again. Do you see that logo, everybody, where it's in blue and it says Fox News? Everybody see that, right? Of course, that's an utter 100% lie. It is not Fox News. It is Fox commentary skewered to a right-wing radical extreme base. That's what it is. All right. So, Brian, anything they cut, anything can be done. Well, that's not true. Many things can be done by taking things out of context. Sometimes it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. In this case, for Fox News, who's trying to recover now from the loss of Tucker Carlson, they have to do something. And their numbers are down. And so this is a way to solidify the watching base that they have. And I don't know who picks up new. I mean, I really don't know at this point. It would be interesting, and I'd love to hear from our people watching. Where are the people who aren't involved? You know what I mean? Have taken a stand. I don't really know many. I mean, I don't know everyone. I don't know, obviously I don't know everyone, of course not. But I mean, of all the people that I know, everyone has taken a stand, either for Trump, against Trump, for the Republican Party, against the Republican Party. So, my question is, what value is this? If only Fox is only preaching to the choir, as they say, that's one thing. I don't think they're getting any converts.
Right. Let's continue for a little bit and see.
This is what she does. I built hundreds of miles. You know who took them more than anybody is Joe Biden. He has 1,800 boxes,
That's
and
not
nobody
accurate,
even
Mr.
knows where
President,
they
and you
are.
know that.
1,800, and nobody talks about him.
Mr. President,
And they
that's not accurate.
put. It's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple.
Stop it.
You're a nasty person.
Sure.
I'll tell you.
Right. All right. So here's what I would do. The question I would ask as a news broadcaster, Mr. Trump, you just said that Joe Biden has 1,800 boxes of material. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right? That's what he said. I said, would you be willing to risk your dick on that? And what we'll do is we'll put your dick on the chopping block. And if there's 1,799 boxes, your dick is gone, Donald. How's that work for you?
Okay.
What
I
was
mean,
that?
at some point, that's
Why
what you
not?
have to. No, I know
Why-
that at some point, that's
why
what you
not?
have to say. And that is
Why not?
a watered down version of what Christopher Hitchens would have said. If actually Christopher Hitchens might have said something like that, he wouldn't have taken that shit.
Well,
I mean,
nasty person. Anybody that Trump doesn't like who is a female is automatically a nasty person.
right.
Okay. I feel somewhat sorry for Caitlin, the CNN commentator.
Modern.
She's being groomed to rise. Okay. She's in line to inherit Rachel Maddow's position. I don't see her at this point having what Rachel had. Rachel had a magic that stars have, but it doesn't mean she can't get better. This certainly doesn't help her in the long run. But I mean, I don't think she asked for it. If she did, they still gave it to her. So I'm blaming.
Well, she was better than Megyn Kelly with Putin,
Well-
but she's really not very good.
Well, it's hard. I mean, it would be hard. I mean, you'd really have to fight Trump on Trump's grounds. You really do have to. And probably the best line in any of the debates was, "Would you shut up, man?" Trump, when Biden said that to Trump. Okay.
Right.
There's no reason to be civil to the man. There's no reason to show any respect to the man.
Right.
Apparently he likes to use his dick on women that don't really want it. So let's make his dick in play. Okay. So I'm going to stick with my 17, he said 1,800. Fine. That's a number. Let's count them and let's see.
Let's see. All right. Now, sooner or later, we're going to have Jeanine Pirro and the rest of them, but let's just continue for a bit.
Despite the fact that Trump is leading the Republican field, Democrats and the partisan press are completely losing their minds at CNN for giving the former president a platform.
Gooder, $25 active sunglasses for anyone. That includes
fuck?
you, party animal.
Sorry about that.
I'm gonna count that also as a fail. 0 for 2.
What I didn't know was that the audience would be filled with his cult. I would like to know
True.
if CNN was passing out Kool-Aid before the event started.
I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision.
There is no sense in fact-checking or replaying the highlights.
I'm sure you're going to have more fact checks for us because there were more lies than I could count.
I think we needed a chyron. This is a lie. This is a lie. This is a lie. This is a lie.
And a Republican lawmaker is taking a shot at CNN as well for not being interested in the issues that voters care about.
Town halls are for the voters, not for the press. not for the person who's the moderator. Caitlyn spent more time interjecting her own viewpoints or her own views on the situation.
Excuse me, those are actually facts now.
Now, are you guys not going to interject your views on me, or do I get a chance to speak now? Voters want to talk about inflation, the border, fentanyl, the debt ceiling, foreign policy.
You know, Dana, what's interesting about it is we just saw Byron Donalds, the Congressman.
I don't think we have to pursue this any further as far as Fox.
Well, I think it's an interesting point. Anytime a president or a candidate for president or for any office, for that matter, for dog catcher is the one they always use. If you're running for office, there's a question of what questions you should respond to, right? What issues are the important issues? So no matter, you don't have enough time to get them all in, so you have to be somewhat selective. There was some merit to what the gentleman said about the choice, but again, I just look at it. I mean, when I was, if I was at a press conference as a reporter, I might get a chance, if I was lucky, to ask one question and a follow-up. Even if I had a half-hour sit down, I did some TV, doing that a little bit when I was in the business of journalism. And you're still at the what should I say? You're really at the mercy of the person you're interviewing, right? They really dictate the tone. I'll give you an example of something else, a little bit different, and certainly changed my mind about a band. I was never a huge Cheap Trick fan, but I appreciated what they did. I thought Rick Nielsen was, once in a while, the guitar player, was kind of cool. And Bunny Carlos, who's no longer with him, the drummer, I thought he was kind of cool.
But anyway, he was kind of honest. He said I was the only one who wasn't getting laid when everybody was starting to come to the hotel rooms,
Well, Robin Zander's pretty good looking, I guess women say, and Rick Nielsen's just goofy. But anyway, I happened to see him on a music cruise, and they came out to do an interview with the Jason, who was actually the cruise director of all 7 of Star Vista's cruises. So, I mean, he's well known in that because many people go on. I mean, people have been on all 11 malt shot or 12 malt shot memory cruises. Sometimes they go on 3 or 4. So anyway, they get on ship. They're going to do it, and 3 of them just sat there and wouldn't say a thing. And Nielsen proceeded to actually sexually proposition Jason's wife, and it was just like Jason couldn't do anything about it, right? I mean, you can't force people to speak. And I thought he handled it very well when he just shut him down. He just looked at Rick and said, well, Rick, what you just said may be true, but tonight, guess who's going to bed with my wife? It's not you. Mm-hmm. My point being that I lost all kinds of respect. They actually had a meeting the next day on ship about this thing because Jason is beloved as he's young guys. I think he's 40-some. Young, maybe even a little bit younger than that. And, everybody looks at him as their son or grandson, and they attack Jason. And Cheap Trick paid a price. Now, probably there weren't that many Cheap Trick fans on the ship. They did perform, and people like Cheap Trick still said they were good, whatever. But how does that equate? Well, it's the same thing here with politics. No matter what the subject is, and no matter who you're interviewing, you're at the mercy of the person being interviewed. If they choose not to talk, if they choose to divert the question in a different direction, if they choose to lie. I sort of like the one suggestion, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie, flashing up. I think that might prove interesting. My question would be, and again, it keeps coming, who hasn't made up their mind about Donald Trump in America? Who?
Right, well, that's my point, though. We were talking just very briefly before we came on, Dave, and I'm saying these simple messages. There is this large group of people who, for better explanation, they are independent in the sense that they're not political. They are just simply people living day to day. Like you remember when you were teaching, the students were only caring about the meal that's coming up or the party that's going to happen Friday night.
Right.
They weren't, they wouldn't be able to tell you who their congressman or congresswoman was. So there's this mass group of people who are, whether they're uneducated or they're not, in the know of these kind of things, they respond so quickly to what they see in the news at that moment, just like the student at the moment.
But Brian, we get back to my point. I don't think anybody watched that and came away impressed with Trump or supporting Trump who didn't go into it feeling the same way. That's all.
Right. I mean, it was essentially a pep rally for his own people.
Well, I think one of the worst things.
But they put a flag on on a liberal. Well, I don't want to say liberal, but I don't think it's liberal, but liberal media.
Well, there's a couple of things going on. I think one is, first of all, it was a number of mistakes. I think holding it was a mistake. I really do. Okay. So if DeSantis takes over in the polls, are we going to give one to him? Right. Part of the rationale was he's a Republican Trump runner. Have you seen any other ex-presidents? Have you seen Barack Obama having a town hall? Bill Clinton?
No.
George Bush? So that argument doesn't fly, that he was once a president.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, presidents do. Of course, we didn't expect Trump to be normal. Normally, presidents fade. You know what I mean? Fade or find another area. Jimmy Carter, in my estimation, is the greatest ex-president in the United States of America's history for what he accomplished after he was president, right? But not seeking it. Habitat for Humanity, peace missions. When I lived in Atlanta, I was there a few times to the Carter Peace Center.
That's a good point Veg is making, because I did see Anderson Cooper's response, and his response basically was, well, here we have the candidate who's probably going to be the nominee, and he has 75 million supporters. Why not have him on? That kind of thing. He said, yes, he lied, blah, blah, blah. But I think that was, and I'm surprised that Anderson Cooper did that. I mean, I know that he can't attack his own network, but I don't think that was proper reasoning for him.
Also, and I did this as a journalist. You tend to rally around those like you. Like, Brian, you really see it with teachers. I mean, you'd be hard pressed, right, to condemn a teacher until the facts were in, because that's
absolutely right.
You know how difficult it is. I was that way with teachers. I was that way with journalists. So there is some rallying around. I think, though, the problem becomes Trump is so toxic that if you even come out like Anderson Cooper's, not even just kind of saying it was okay, you run the risk of alienating more people than Trump would gain, right? In other words, I think the other thing that I think was hard, and I'd love to know why, the choice of the audience. They were actually confirmed Trump supporters or Republicans.
Right.
It was not a cross section.
And see, that's what I'm wondering. What was? I mean, it sounds like, at least again, I have no knowledge of anything behind the scenes, but it seems to me that Trump would not have gone on if there were Democrats.
Well, that would be interesting. Well, no, I would tend to agree with you. Okay, I would.
And I'm sure nobody even knows it, but it's so obvious. Why didn't they have any liberals there?
Because what we don't know, and I wouldn't believe the management at CNN if they said they came out and basically, what they wanted to do, I think, is a few things. One is maybe in the sense if Trump wins, kind of maybe softening him a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Not the enemy. He won't. Because what people forget about Donald Trump, it's only what you said in the minute. You could give the man $1 million and a blowjob, and in the next day you didn't give him the blowjob, he would put you down as whatever. That's Donald Trump. Okay, right. That's Donald Trump. The new head, and the name escapes me right now. It's not important. There is a new head of news at CNN. And his thing is he wants to make it, bring it to reflect more the American values, or not using that word, America. Well, what the hell? America's divided. What do you got? That didn't help America, right? That just played into the divisions that are there. I think CNN has a tough job because MSNBC has the liberals, right. Fox, OAN, and Newsmax.
There's definitely a difference between MSNBC and CNN. Being a liberal myself, I can see the difference.
Oh, absolutely. Now, again, same thing holds. Actually, in terms of news, CNN may be the best network of those.
Right. They're up to date in every topic compared to MSNBC.
Maybe. However, what happens is, and people don't realize this either, and unless you're in the business, like I'm sure Veg and everybody that tunes into our show, Joey, they all work at other places and they're familiar with that. So like I said, I've worked in journalism for a while. Journalism talks about news, but it's basically a money-making business. And actually, the pyramid is newspapers. It was less important in newspapers, more important in radio, and most important in television, okay? So if you're a money-making business, and when Ted Turner came up with the idea, everybody laughed and scoffed and said, this will never go. when he was the first to propose 24/7 news cycle. Everybody in the business said, just like they did with USA Today, this is a joke. They called it the McPaper for McDonald's, you know. But Ted Turner did prove with CNN there was an audience for 24/7 news cycle. The problem becomes is there's not enough news that the networks think are important enough to warrant 24/7. Like if you really did the world news, right, you'd pick up Australia and, you know, and move across the globe, right, as things happen. I don't know, Tim, sometimes $1 million is nice too. You go along with that and you say, well, wait a minute. It's about the money here. CNN was positioning himself, I think, in a number of different ways. Now, the question becomes, did it backfire? That's the question we don't know. I would be fairly certain that no one who watched that who was not a Trump supporter became a Trump supporter based on that performance. I'm not real sure if CNN didn't lose some viewers, right? Marketers in a journalism suit. Yeah, that's what, and actually more so as you move up, right? Like I said, that was basically the hierarchy. And now even more so because it's desperation to hold on. You know, you're talking about numbers. And it'll be interesting. It will be interesting. And this is just an aside. Do you think we have problems now with news coverage of presidential candidates? With a generation coming up with TikTok? You know, I mean, that's going to be very interesting. That's what, less than a 30-second soundbite. You know, and how will that play in? I'll talk a little bit later in the show about education and my concerns about America. But I'll finish my end with CNN like this way. I think it was a mistake that they did it. If they set out to accomplish getting their name in the news, then maybe it was good for them. I still think it was a risk. And I think it's dangerous in the long run, not just for Trump, but I think it sets a bad precedent. What, no pun intended, what do you do with a candidate? Does every declared candidate, does Bobby Kennedy get that now? Right? He's a declared candidate. And if not, why? So it was just bad. But I really think in the long run, you know, when the dust settles next week and we're on to the next crisis or the next faux pas or whatever, I don't think it'll mean much.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dave, we're going to take a quick peek at Steve Schmidt and his commentary, which is not too dissimilar to what you've said. So we'll check his.
By CNN's Chris Licht, to throw Donald Trump a propaganda rally, to stack an audience full of his sycophants, and then to celebrate it as news is an absurdity. It's as delusional as anything that Donald Trump said on his air. America learned nothing from this event that it didn't already know. What it saw is more evidence of the political and media corruption that is deeply harming the fabric of the country. What they saw is an unfit despot who seeks political power to seek retribution against the people who he feels wronged him. What the American people saw was someone incapable of recognizing reality, someone who is insensitive to fact, a blusterer, a narcissist, a deluded old man with venom and malice in his heart. What Chris Licht produced wasn't journalism, it was a snuff film, and the subject was American democracy. The decision by CNN's Chris Licht to throw Donald Trump.
So there you go. Yeah, I mean,
he's
a wordsmith there.
That's a good, what was a good image? A snuff film to kill American democracy. That's, I think, you know, the problem becomes Steve Schmidt is a very intelligent man, I believe. I don't know him personally, but what I listen, I think he has strong values, and he still is a conservative. Okay, let's not kid ourselves.
Yes, he is,
and he's also a Republican. If you know, he would support, you know, a Republican candidate who wasn't a Trumper. So we say that, but everything he said is true, but it doesn't matter because that's not what America saw. That's what Steve Schmidt saw. That's what I see. That's what you see. That's what our listeners see. But there's X number of people who didn't see that. They see something else. And we've talked about it again and again and again. And, you know, I used to say that greed would be the death of America. And we're certainly not past that. But I think now the sheer number of people who can look at something and alter reality or not see the reality of it may be more dangerous than the greed in the long run.
right,
in the long run, because and they work hand in hand. I mean, certainly the greedy realize they have a wedge in. Think about just think about Trump. I haven't seen the figures yet. If somebody out there has, maybe they could post them. I think it would be interesting. How much money he's raised since that CNN? Because everything he does is to raise money, right? And then of course the money disappears. It doesn't go where it's supposed to go. We know that. Hey, Karen.
It seems to disappear very quickly too. It's like he's got this cash flow that he immediately, like a mob boss, he puts out in his backyard with the plastic.
Everybody kind of compares him to mob boss. I think he's an awful bad mob boss. He's no Don Corleone. Okay?
Well, he's only as bad as his effectiveness, and I mean, he did not win the election, but he almost pulled that thing off. But he's gotten away with so much, and that's the problem.
Okay, that's true. Okay, now
and a mob boss gets away with a lot.
I'm not arguing with that. What I'm going to say is, what you said is absolutely true. But the last 2 cases he's been in, he's been found guilty.
Yes,
Stormy Daniels, and the sexual assault. And I loved it. The victim is talking about suing again, and I think she should, because he libeled her again and slandered her again with the remarks he made and lied on CNN. So it's certainly there. I mean, he just doesn't get it, or doesn't care. I don't even know. It's not even worth discussing. I mean, it just isn't.
But now it seems as though the entire Republican Party has taken the face of the liar. I mean, they all have 1,000 faces, and this is a problem, because you had at one time you had one person causing trouble, but now you've got hundreds of politicians causing trouble.
If you want to say it's gone beyond Trump, of course. I mean, he is the lightning rod for what's going on. It lights the sky with stuff.
I mean, it seems like this is the modus operandi of doing things. They realize now that this is the blueprint for how the party is going to take over the country.
I would agree. However, the problem is they haven't taken over the country, have they yet? They lost.
No, they haven't. Election. They've taken over certain states.
Correct, but they have not. They haven't taken over America. They haven't taken over an election yet. Now, I'm not saying that we sit passively over the next, between now and 2024.
Well, there is another discussion.
Hopefully, we'll talk about a lot of things that people can do to make sure that doesn't happen. Right.
Right.
But again, divided we stand. Divided in families, but divided in states. Okay, Texas and Florida. Abbott is worse than DeSantis any day of the week. But there are other states, that are trying to. Utah's gone crazy now again. For a while, when Mitt Romney was there, interesting enough, I think, again, I've said it before, I think biggest thing a president does, he, hopefully someday she, sets the tone of the country, right? There's a different tone with Joe Biden in the office than there was with Donald Trump. Forget about what's done, right? Just a different tone.
And they still have Mike Lee in Utah. He's a nut job too.
Yeah. But it's interesting. You mentioned Mr. Lee. People know who watch the show. We know I live in Crystal City. I live in a place called Crystal Plaza. And actually 2 apartments are rented here by the Republican Party of Utah. And
really?
4 guys and 4 girls, women, young women, stay there and work on the Hill with Utah, government. And I was got in a discussion with a couple guys who worked with Mike Lee. And I mean, they really see him as this good guy who's really.
He's not a good guy. He's a supreme asshole.
You know that, and I know that. They don't. And these are college graduates. They're Mormons, but Lee is
already. There you go.
Well. I mean, interesting though. Mormon religion is really not that connected to politics as some. Certainly not as much as the Southern Baptists.
Well, they seem to vote Republican all the time, but
that's. But I'm just saying they don't proselytize from the pulpit as much. I think it's just basically, if you're in Utah, you're a Mormon, and then if you leave the Mormon church, you're not a Mormon. Right. A lot of times. But I just thought that was interesting. Again, these are young people. I always think, man, young people, how would they support this party? Well, there's a couple. And there, now, the other thing that we don't know, and Karen puts it up there, is Donald Trump is now the front runner, right? Correct?
Correct.
Growing numbers weekly, it appears.
I mean, DeSantis is intimidated. That just shows you he's the
Well,
governor.
what I'm saying, DeSantis has to decide pretty soon, A, is he going to run? And B, if he is, how's he going to cut Trump's lead? And that could get interesting. That could get interesting fast.
He's going to need help from Fox somehow. I don't know how he does it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, but
that means he has to get it from Rupert Murdoch
or
Sean Hannity, and the people
somewhere from there, right? And again, they're going to be looking at I mean, if you want to back a winner right now in the Republican Party, you back Trump, right? I mean,
but they're not going to cannibalize themselves, Dave. I know that. That's the unwritten law of the Republican Party. Don't cannibalize each other.
Well, they'll bow out. But Liz Cheney is working actively now nationwide with a group. She's, to stop Donald Trump. That's her sole purpose right now. She's not in politics anymore. And she and her group limited a video page in front and sells in matching clothes and mass marching around the Capitol carrying upside down flags. Veg, when was that? Put a date up on there because I didn't see it. And that's, it's 3 miles from my house. I should, or 4, I guess. So, I'm kind of looking at this. Interesting thing to me is how DeSantis takes on Trump. He's got to. Or he just bows out.
Christie said the blueprint is he's got to, like you say, you got to come right out and attack and go right to the gutter.
But I mean, there are some delusional politicians. Chris Christie is one. Chris Christie, he was for Trump. He was against Trump. He was so stupid that he thought he was going to get Attorney General of the United States when he put Jared's father in prison. I mean, that's dumb. Okay. Now, Chris Christie was not a dumb governor. Okay. I mean, he wasn't. He just wasn't a dumb man. He does have one redeeming factor. He's a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, so I will give him that. Has nothing to do with his government.
Dave?
Today, Veg, you'll have to look at it. No, I was unaware of it, and I wish I'd known. I could have gone up there and waved to them and talked to them and hang out.
Live report on Divided We Stand.
There. And of course, what happens now, Brian, and we're laughing, as we should, but also I think as America gets deeper into its gun crisis, and it is, we're going to see more and more guns come to play in politics. I don't see any other option to that. I really don't.
Well, in what way? How does that play out?
Well, I think it plays out in the insurrection, right? It plays out in ways of intimidation. If you have a right to carry state, why not put everybody out in front of the voting booth? You can't, most states have laws you can't be within 200 feet of the polling place or whatever. Why not some crazy shoot up a rally? Gabby Gifford. I mean, it has happened. And so I think that's another concern. I don't have an answer for it because I've given up on guns. I really have. I don't know what to do about that. But I think that is a concern. And we have someone like Donald Trump, leading, if you will, the pack, then all bets are off that anything good could happen.
I'll give you this is just a little an aside here, but it's worth showing because this guy's a real son of a bitch and everybody knows who he is. This, of course, would be George Santos. And yet the Republican Party is willing to tolerate him at this point just for any vote that comes away. They're just kind of keeping quiet, which in essence, they're supporting him. So let's check this out.
Saying he doesn't understand where the government got this evidence.
The place that the government got all of this information is from him, from the paperwork.
This is going to have to replay
himself.
a little bit.
This is a paperwork case, and that's the problem for the congressman.
The reality is it's a witch hunt.
Why would you apply for unemployment benefits when you had a job making $120,000 a year?
This is inaccurate information, and I will get to clear my name on this. During the pandemic, it wasn't very clear. I don't understand where the government's getting their information, but I will present my facts.
Taking a page out of former President Trump, saying that this is a witch.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a page.
Stop
and
there.
They're all right.
Well, look, Brian, anybody who gets accused of anything can say it's a witch hunt, right?
Right.
Now, some of that gloss or some of that comes off when you're found guilty. And I don't think there's any question George Santos is guilty of at least some, if not all, of the charges that have been lodged against him. Now, the question becomes, and it's an interesting question, what do you do in the interim? Do you censure? It's Congress censure. They're not going to do that. Do you fall behind the idea that Well, what right do we have, which is one there, what right do we have to remove him since the voters wanted him? Isn't that being anti-democratic? And there is some merit to that, except in one sense. If you are guilty of something, that's different. If you are plead guilty or found guilty, that's different than being charged. So yes, in the charge, I could see, and I if I were a Democrat, I'd be fighting to get him out of there. But by the same token, I could see why you wouldn't at this point. But it doesn't seem like this isn't going to be a Matt Gaetz in the news, and then disappear case. Santos is here to stay because the indictments are in already.
Right.
So we'll have a resolve on Santos one way or the other. And interesting enough, remember last week on the show, we talked a lot about could Donald Trump run for president? What would stop him? We said no. Santos, what happens to Santos may, in a way, pave the way for what might happen to Trump in terms of legal ramifications in politics. Right now, there are none. So I don't know, and I wonder what possessed Santos to lie about everything. I mean, was it a desire? Like I could see.
Isn't he as it is a lie? He's probably in the closet. I mean, he's just.
I am not. I mean, what was his objective? I guess is what I'm saying. If my objective were to get $1 million, and I was willing to break anything to get that, that would be my objective. It'd be clear why I'm doing it. The voters voted on a lie, no question. The question becomes now, what do you do about that? Do you wait, until fortunately with the House, it's only 2 years. So, I'm not a fan of that. I think you press forward and then see what happens. But really, the Republicans aren't going to remove, if they're not going to do anything about Clarence Thomas,
right?
They're not going to do a damn thing about Santos until they're forced to do it, or Donald Trump until they're forced to do it, or anyone else in the Republican Party.
And I'm sure they're just saying, we'll lay off of you as long as you just keep rolling in the votes for us.
Well, and you got to remember, again, it's very thin. The margin in the House is very thin.
Right, so they need that one vote there.
Just like it's very thin in the Senate for the Democrats, and even more thin. And again, I respect Dianne Feinstein for what she's done. I think she's been a good senator overall. But it's time, Dianne, to bid adieu and go out and let somebody.
And the Republicans are defending her to keep her in.
Well, of course, because she doesn't.
Right.
She didn't show up.
Show up.
And I'm not. Look, she was ill. I understand that. But however, I think when you're in, especially when age is a factor in the presidential race, right? People say, well, wait a minute, it happened to her. It could happen to Joe Biden. Well, it could or it couldn't. That really is immaterial. But I don't know what she stays for. Like, to me, that kind of tarnishes her legacy, which I think was fairly strong from a liberal standpoint. And now it's like, what are you hanging on for? But she's back, and Soros is still there. And I'll be fascinated to see if CNN does what they do next with a political town hall. That's an interesting.
I'm wondering, Dave. Like, obviously, Santos was in trouble before. They're, outside the country. They want him to be extradited. Perhaps someone like Santos tried to gain political power because he knew within the Republican Party pardons would come his way and that they would defend him just as long as he did what Donald Trump said. It seems like everybody just wants pardons, and Trump's willing to give them out. I mean, whether it's Roger Stone or Paul Manafort, it doesn't matter.
This is not original with me, but only guilty people want pardons.
Right.
So the very seeking of a pardon lends credibility to the fact that you did something, right? I'm sure there are people who want to, very cautious people. Well, I don't think I'll get convicted, but if I do, I want this.
Well, what Trump's saying is with the pardons, these are witch hunts. So therefore, it's a legitimate pardon because the actual conviction didn't mean anything anyway because it was just convicted by a New York court or a liberal court.
Well, you can dismiss anything, and Trump will. But I mean, a witch hunt. I said it before. I said it again. A witch hunt falls once the facts have established that a crime was committed. Then it's no longer a witch hunt.
Right.
No, it's no longer a witch hunt. You can't call it a witch hunt.
Right.
Now
But again, 2/3 of the country, it doesn't matter because they don't know particulars. They only know the word witch hunt. They kept it so simple. It's like, like they're punching the phone number with their fist.
All right. Let's bring this up now. I'm going to go out of order for what I wanted to do, but I want you've given a good segue in there. You really want to lose sleep tonight, Brian?
Oh, might as well. I've been doing for the last 6 years.
Here we go. All right. So, would you agree that the country is in trouble politically?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that the country is in trouble with determining facts and fiction?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that the country could be in trouble with just a natural or unnatural, I guess, dumbness and ignorance? I'm not going to say dumb or stupid. I'm going to say ignorant. If you're ignorant of the Constitution, you're ignorant of the laws of the land, you're ignorant of the Bible, all these things that are being thrown at us.
100%.
All right, here we go. Now you can.
My biggest fear.
Well, here we go. Now, not to say any, we hear about math and reading scores all the time, right? And they're low. They're really friggin' low. Now, let me qualify that by one thing. They are low in places of poverty. They are not low in places of affluence. They are not low in families of affluence that live in communities of poverty. There's a direct correlation between, and it's been since the beginning of time in American education, between socioeconomic standing and success on tests, reflection on test scores. Now, the results are in on both the history and civics proficiency. Now, would you agree that while math and reading are important, history and civics is what's going to bring down America? I mean, you could argue, not being able to do math is not
right. If you don't know who your representative is, you have no representative.
Or if you don't know what he does or she does or how
Absolutely.
it works.
It's like I tell my students, if you see a pothole in front of your house, I gave them an example. I said, there are people who no matter what they see, when they see a pothole and their car runs over and they get a flat tire, they say, Obama, the roads are bad, it's Obama's fault. They don't, they don't know whether it's a county road, they don't know whether it's a local road, whether it's a federal highway. So they don't even know the person they're blaming, but they're going to blame liberals, and this is what it is.
Right. So both those scores are down substantially. And
for civics and history.
Civics and history, and again, reflecting, as I said before, more so in areas of poverty. Now we have really in America we have two areas of poverty, or two types. We have inner city, which is basically minority, right? Minority poverty is basically, and then you have the great flyover part of the country and the deep South, and they're basically Republican. So you're going to have some problems, and if people don't know what to do, like interesting enough, I think we all have, those of us who have families. Sometimes we see current events reflect in our family, and my granddaughter's turning out to be quite the radical, which I really like. She's 15 and stands up for a lot of things in Alabama, which isn't that damn easy. But they were having a discussion the other day, and one of her classmates, Brian, has a nationally ranked YouTube show where he interviews, and he's a senior this year. He's had it for 4 years. He hasn't interviewed Trump, but he's interviewed a lot of people. It's a pretty influential show. And she was really upset about it. And then he was talking about the Bible and how America should be Bible.
Right.
And Michael and my son Michael and Shannon, my daughter-in-law, said to Audrey, before you attack him, you should read the Bible. Make sure you know what he's talking about. And I think that's the problem that I also have. It's interesting. I think this lack of religious training early. Now, you would say indoctrination. I'm going to say I was indoctrinated and escaped. But what it allowed me to do is understand a lot of things. It helped me understand American literature a lot better. If you don't know about the story about Jonah and the whale, Moby Dick doesn't have the same power. I mean, just that simple. And throughout. But also, you also have the idea of, you kind of know that that's not what Jesus said. Now, I'm going to say you have to memorize it. So I think you've got on the one hand, you've got the dropping civics and history scores. We know math and reading are down. Now you've got this idea of what was founded on. Now, am I advocating teaching religion in school? No, of course not. But I really have no problem. I've thought about this a lot. I'd really have no problem with using the Bible as literature, because I did. I did. I mean, I really don't have a problem.
That's fine, but to indoctrinate
But Brian, you
children into religion. No, I understand that. I'm just saying. I think it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem.
Well, yes, but it's also part of the problem if you're going to attack it, you don't know it.
Well,
you need to know your enemy better than they know themselves, and you need to know what.
And there are people. Aaron Ra, he's one of the heads of the atheist groups. He used to be religious. He does know all the different passages. So when he does argue with these people, he can do it. Christopher Hitchens,
right? And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, but I'm just saying, in general, we shouldn't even have to do that. It's such nonsense. It really is nonsense. It's nonsense. There's no sense to it.
But the cards are out. You got to play the cards that are dealt. You can't, or you got to play the game. The game that's dealt. You might want to play poker.
I would have been no worse off by never having seen religious material, because it didn't take much. Even at the age of 5, you knew you had your conscience, your idea of right and wrong. You kind of knew. Don't kick somebody.
Brian, you say that all the time, and I'm going to disagree with you. People don't know. If they did, they wouldn't act the way they do. I think there are many who know and don't care.
Well, yeah, but those people are the ones that are brought up in the religious traditions of, they're not listening, we'll beat them down. The kid, don't spare the rod. I think a lot of that comes from religion itself, or they get it when they go to, Catholic school and the ruler goes over their wrist.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Another thing that I think, and I'll tie it in this way, I was going to talk a little bit about it, but I think one of the things that kills us is the American myths. And one of the American myths is the cowboy, right? Riding with justice and, the gun and all that. So I've been watching, Judy and I have been sitting here and killing some time watching Yellowstone and the 2 spinoffs from it, 1923 and 18. And the basic storyline is Montana, right? It's all taking place in Montana and how we went through this. And in the one, 1923, there's a Catholic school where the Native Americans are set, right? And it is the most brutal indictment of Catholicism I've ever seen in my life. It is so painful to watch. And it's true. It's true. So, you do run the risk of religion being bad and perverse. I just wonder, and I think sometimes, Brian, I honestly believe this, you have a really hard time separating Bible as literature from Bible as morality. I don't think you do that real well. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm just saying, I think that's what I think. And so whenever
I think the danger, the poison is, and that's even what Hitchens said. It was poison.
Let me ask you a question. Could I teach the Bible?
I don't know.
Would you trust me?
I'm sure. You know what? I think that those people are so gullible. Even if you didn't know it, you could make up fucking names and stories and people.
That's my point. That's my point. There is no doubt that America is based on Judeo-Christian principles. We may not enact them, we may not look at, we may not do that, but that's where it comes from. If you don't know the basis for that, if you don't know the 10 Commandments, right?
Oh, I know the first 4 commandments are ridiculous. It has nothing to do with right and wrong. It has to do with,
right,
basically kissing the ring of this guy daddy.
Right. But again, I still think there's value in
But how far do you when is there value in going through having young kids read a gory text that, Methuselah begets Methuselah and Methuselah beget Methuselah, but this one wasn't related to this. What the fuck is that? This is 2023. Yeah, I say you have more valuable time learning about civics or about science, about anything of the natural sciences.
Then why not take what is biblical in civics and do that? In other words, we say in God we trust, right?
We say who's we?
They
put that on the coin in 1956.
Correct.
To placate, the McCarthyism movement.
Right. How many people do you think know that?
Well, yeah, the ignorant people. Yeah, that's right. And the Bible's not going to teach them that.
Well, it's going to teach them that it wasn't there. I mean,
I don't even think that. I don't.
No.
I mean, you can't even have Christians and Jews. I'm just within Christianity, within Judaism. There's no agreement on what this means. You got 4 different books.
No, Brian. You're still.
I mean, I didn't want to turn this into a religious argument.
No, but yeah, it is, because you're still looking at it as morality, or side is right or side is wrong. I'm saying just learn the stories. That's all. Just learn the fucking stories. Leave it at that. And you pick the ones that you think actually apply to America today. That's all. And I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. Then how do you want to teach it? For example, if you teach about, the plagues and the firstborn, and you say, well, why didn't God just put a plague on Pharaoh? I understand that, but see, here's the problem. When you start arguing that way, I mean, that sounds like an effective argument, but then you've got these religious nuts who, they're adamant about what this means, or even Jesus. I mean, most ridiculous thing I've ever heard was Jesus saying the poor will be with us, with us always. Here you have this hero of the poor, and he's already fucking giving up. You can say for the rest of time.
And if there were a Jesus, and he did say that, he's absolutely right. Okay, the poor will be with us forever, Brian. It's relative.
Well, then why be a Messiah if you're going to give up on the poor? Why don't you change something? Give them some water. Make them not poor.
Who the fuck cares? Who cares whether you believe it was a Messiah or not? I mean, really, that's your personal belief, right?
What? What's my personal?
Absolutely not. Right. Okay.
There are no messiahs except for people who actually, a group of people who will do something to help save society. And that can be done without any type of religious this or that. No, there are no messiahs.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a messiah? Where's Jesus now?
Why
he's not here? Look, it's a rhetorical question, but I'm just saying he's not here when you need him, okay? I mean, people talk about how much they love Jesus and, how hot he looks. It's just, it's an absurdity.
You know what would be so cool right now? And of course, I don't believe this is going to happen, but it'd be so cool if Jesus appeared in your home right now and punched you in the nose. That would be really cool if you think about it. And you know how many believers we'd get if we saw that?
You know what would be cool? If Jane Mansfield would appear on your desk right now. That would be cool.
No, because Jane's
if her head was still on her. Okay.
Yeah, right. Jane's dead and decapitated. All right. That's not good. No. But I think again, I baited you with that. Of course, I baited.
No, I understand. We've done this to each other all the time.
But I think what does happen, what does concern me, is we have a number of people, half America using the Bible to justify actions, to a half of America that doesn't know what the Bible says. That bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Power of suffering, Tim. The problem with suffering is that is the problem of the universe. That there is suffering. There's a lot more of that. I don't know how you learn, like you say, that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. No, that which makes me suffer. We're all trying to get comfort. So the problem with existence is suffering. And even Dostoevsky, would mention that. But I don't see suffering as a necessary thing to learn. It's not something that necessarily makes us better. For example, I know when I have, if I had a pain in my arm, I know it's warning me that something's wrong, but it would be nice if that suffering would stop after a minute. I get the message I'm suffering, but no, it continues. And so suffering in itself is the whole ball game. It's the whole ball game. And it's not something I invite. It's something I try to avoid.
And I think part of it is, in general...
let me just continue with this. The universe is indifferent, but the universe is a system of unintelligent design, which it creates mechanisms of suffering. You have selfish genes. You have, as Mendham says, you have C-R-A-P, crap. You have consumption, reproduction, addiction, and parasitism. And all of them lead to suffering. So the universe in itself is defined by one law besides physics, that is evolution. And it is a destructive machine against itself. If we haven't suffered now, there will be a time when we will. And if you don't suffer that much, somebody else will. And there's no reason to declare victory in it. The suffering is the problem of the universe. It's not as though it is forcing it. The system is such that it creates suffering. It creates it.
Let me ask you a question based on that just real quickly. Is life more good or is life more bad?
Absolutely more bad.
Okay.
Absolutely. 1,000 times worse. Everything that, remember, for every, tadpole that is born, 10,000 don't live. How do you define living, well? Every little nuisance we have is minor sufferings, aside from these occasional moments of joy,
So does that enhance or cheapen our discussion of Donald Trump as president?
The discussion of suffering in the universe?
Yeah,
Trump?
does that enhance or diminish?
No, it enhances it because you see the mechanisms within the universe. Unintelligent design. This is what happens when you do not have a sense of logic and how you deal with it. You have Trump is the personification of unintelligent design. It's more friction than function, and that's the problem. And he's already created the problem. I don't even know how we get out of this thing. He is suffering. He is. So yes, it's an unfortunate indictment on the discussion, which does connect Trump and this discussion about religion and this unintelligent side. Religion has promoted this idea of suffering, with the dominion over the earth, with be fruitful and multiply. The very multiplication of the population has caused great suffering.
See, and I would say that worked when the timing of the Bible worked. You needed to be fruitful and multiply to have the universe. To have the earth, right? Can't have an earth with 4 people.
Well, a stop clock is right twice a day. It's not that they knew that.
And no, but I'm just saying.
They had no concept. In fact, even then, people didn't have concept of, having sex, and 9 months later, the pregnancy. They assumed that they didn't really. It took a while for people to catch on to them.
I don't know. One of the reasons, I think, obviously, it was a family-based, and I don't mean values-based, but family was really what was controlling way back then, right? So if you worked the farm, you needed a bunch of farm hands. How do you get that? You have children, right? So so I think it was just part of that whole thing. And what I fault is that we're still using that, or people are still using that when it no longer applies. It no longer applies. We should be careful.
Right. It no longer applies.
Yeah. And so we should be careful.
Although in Russia, it's applying because you're seeing, or in certain countries, you're seeing the demographics where they're losing the population. And because if you don't have 2 children, you know what's going to happen to the population. There is that threat.
Well, see, and what's going to be interesting about that, I think, too.
The problem is the religious countries in South America and in the Middle Eastern countries, they are overpopulating, and then the movement north.
And there you are. And that's going to be, the idea of it is.
And now you have an immigration problem.
Yeah, and America,
refugee problem.
If America if America stopped today immigration, right? We would fall within 100 years. We're just not producing enough kids. We're just not producing enough people. So we need to bring them in. But then when we bring them in, they're the other. This whole week has been the border thing about, Well,
we brought them also in because of the work that needed to be done on.
And still bring them
the tragedy of slavery, too. You got that work for free. And
well,
you couldn't have gotten from where we got to that quickly without slavery, and that's not endorsing slavery at all. This is
two original sins. 2 original sins for America. One is slavery. The other is the treatment of its indigenous population. And we wouldn't have America the way it is without that.
Right.
And that brings me up to the next question, the next point I want to make, which is also educational tonight, kind of my education night. Book banning, and now it's moved beyond book banning to states deciding what could be in textbooks. Now, Brian, you've been in education a long while, and the belief is, and I've heard it from the day I entered education, that Texas and California drive textbooks. You've heard that, correct?
Correct.
And why is that?
Well, I know that first of all, I know that, for example, Southwestern, they are from Texas, and the textbooks it's a lot of money that's involved, and they own other corporations. So they're some of the biggest corporations in the country.
That's part of it, but also they have a lot of people, right? A lot of students, and
the textbooks are different. Even the same textbook is actually different from some states to some other states.
Well, and there's another thing, all right? Many parents,
especially the science textbooks.
Many parents, and I don't blame them for this, naively think, oh, a textbook is to educate students. No, you know what a textbook is? To make money.
Right, especially when they're $85 a book.
Right.
Even when we were in college, you had to pay so much money for textbooks. You know, you said, God damn, you know, I just paid tuition, and now I'm paying, at the time, $30, $35 for a book. Now they're 85, 90, 100.
Oh, I know. So, but what happens is, it really was kind of assumed between a panel of teachers and the book publishers, this is what we put in the books, you know, in the textbooks. And I remember getting a real pitched battle because boards of education and administrators can be awfully dumb, trust me. And I wanted to use it. They put in a rule, Brian, if you remember, I think you were there when it came in, you could not use a textbook older than 10 years. Do you remember that?
Yes, I think it's still in effect.
In and of itself, that's not a bad thing, right? You don't want a history book that's 15 years old. I got that part, right?
Right.
But my argument was I could supplement with British literature textbooks that were better than anything that's coming out today.
Right.
So British literature was done 1,000 years ago. You know, not British literature, but I'm talking about medieval, Chaucer, King Arthur tales, Beowulf. And so there was always been this battle, but right now it's really getting into breaking down to groups, both political groups and parent groups, deciding what goes into the textbook, or
the digital textbook,
what can't go into the textbook. Now, what's the danger of that? Very simply, politics, it should stay out of education as much as possible, right? Because it has a different agenda. Its agenda is not to educate people. It's not. It's to do other things.
Well, that is the Republican agenda. That's where they're trying to take over the school boards, and they are taking over the school boards.
And that's it. Now, parents are fighting it on two levels in the state. One is banning books. That's something that we're seeing. I mentioned last show, and it's still true. There's a 30% increase this year, and we're not done the year yet, over last year, and last year was like a 20% increase the year before. So it's really taking off. Virginia, state that I live in, Governor Youngkin won on that issue, on that very issue. Now, my argument with book banning is this. First of all, who decides, right? I mean, to me, that's just stupid. Who decides who bans? Right? So you just don't ban. So what do? If, first of all, you be somewhat judicious about what books you choose, knowing your community, right? But you offer alternatives. Again, not because I'm so great or anything, but I always use this family because they're friends. The Ernst, who actually runs Century Bakery, or did until they in our town for a long time, they were devoutly religious, devoutly. They were Janeites, fundamentalists, long before that was even a popular term. Mm-hmm. And I taught their kids, and I always said, I said to Barb, the mother, I said, and Wayne, the father, said, if you don't like one of the things I'm teaching, one of the side things, I said, just let me know. I'll opt them out. And they opted out of both movies and text. That was fine. I give them something else. That's not, I think that's also being reasonable. I think it's a good thing, right? I think it's the way to handle it. Not banning it for everybody. Because what we're seeing is, and think about this. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say cause and effect, but okay. Would you agree that it appears to be that there's transsexual, the number of people identifying themselves as transsexual is growing in America? Would you agree with that? Brian, I can't hear you. You're talking, but your lips are moving.
Openly,
More,
yes.
Right. Okay. Now,
I mean, but that doesn't mean that there weren't, a large number of transsexuals. I'm just saying
you heard
openly.
what I said.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Now, if you were a young person discovering that or trying to figure out what you were, right, in terms of gender and sex, it'd be nice to have a book or two to go to so you could read about it, right? That's a good way to do it. You probably,
I would say that's a leading question, but I mean, yeah,
So the danger is, as we attack this, we have a growing population who really desperately needs to understand themselves because it's relatively a new, I don't say it's a new area, but it is. I mean, transgender, the past 20 years maybe? I mean, that's, we had gay, lesbian since the beginning of time in the animal kingdom too. We're not going to argue that. But I think that's good that they can go to that. Now, the next thing is that, and then in the textbooks, they're tackling race. You cannot discuss or talk about race. Okay, describe something in America that doesn't involve race.
Right.
Ain't nothing.
Was Huck Finn banned while you were?
Actually, it's funny you should bring that up. Nina Hendricks, I mentioned Nina, shout out, who was a devout Christian and also a phenomenal 8th grade teacher. She was one of the best I ever saw, and black. She and I argued vociferously for 20 years over the use of Huckleberry Finn in the classroom. I supported it, she opposed it. And the reason she opposed it is because they talk about the nigger Jim. So it was the word nigger that she opposed. My argument to her was, if it's taught properly or read properly, the only human male adult character in that book is Jim. Right? Now, maybe you need to lead the kids to that, but it's there. So yes, Huckleberry Finn. There's really not many classics that haven't been banned at some time. The Bible's been banned. Orwell's 1984 is another one that's been banned a lot. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. She's one of the most banned authors there. But Toni Morrison writes realistically. And you also have a lot of children's books are really where they're hitting it. It used to be they were kind of left alone, but then they were basically kind of innocuous. I mean, I used to do a thing that made the kids laugh. I don't know if it'll translate here, but Dick and Jane. Do you remember the Dick and Jane readers?
I do remember those.
Okay, and the kids vaguely, but I would do a reading I'd take a Dick and Jane. And I'd say, "Oh, Dick, I love Dick. Dick is good. I love Dick." All of a sudden they're clack. I said, "No, it's a book." It wasn't that way, but I mean, there was no sex in Dick and Jane, right? Just not there.
Right.
It was Dick Jane spot. There was no sex in Nurse Nancy and Dr. Dan. Didn't happen. All right. Now, people are becoming aware at a younger age, and I think they want to have things. The question becomes, how open should you be as a teacher? And then the second question is, how open can you be as a teacher? And they're two very different questions. My way of approach was very open. Kids had a question, we talk about it. I mean, come on, why not? And I'd go out and find something. There's basically, in literature, there's a poem or there's something for everybody. One that used to really be effective as a poem. I urge everybody to read Richard Cory. I don't want to spoil it for you, but in the poem, Richard Cory has everything, and then one night goes and puts a bullet in his head. And that really leads to a lot of discussion about greed and what makes you happy and how do you do this thing. Another great poem you could talk about. You could use so many. And poetry was good, not for poetry to appreciate poetry, although that's a thing in of itself. They're usually short, and you can really get into them that way. So, as an educator, I mean, I favor open libraries, put the books in there. Now, should you have Stormy Daniels' autobiography, which I have in my personal collection because of my association with Miss Daniels? In a high school library, no. Right? No. I mean, there are certain books that just, don't apply. And so once you start deciding, and it gets back to this, it's like who watches The Watchers? Well, who decides what books are banned and who doesn't? And I think what we saw this week, and the reason I brought it up, Biden, in his announcement, is starting to tie three things together right now. He's going to try to link abortion, voting rights, and book banning. And I think they're all valid issues. And I think what he's going to do is point out that this is what the MAGA right is trying to enforce. And you know, on all three of those, the numbers favor the liberal side. More people are against abridging voting rights than for it. More people are against or for abortion than against it. More people are against banning books than for it. So I think it is a good issue. Now, will it replace the financial issue of the price of eggs? I don't know. You know, and that's really what it's going to come down to. CNN town hall meeting, Joe Biden's announcing it's going to come down to where what's the world going to look like in 2024? That probably doesn't even matter that much unless America is directly involved in a war. You know, and anyway, Donald Trump promised when he solved an hour or whatever it was, the Ukraine-Russian conflict. But what will matter, I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view, will be economic issues. And there, in general, the Republicans, before they became whatever they are now, actually had the advantage because they were considered better fiscal managers of money, right? Tax and spend Democrats, conservative, return tax dollars to your parents.
Until Ronald Reagan arrived.
Right. And it would be interesting, you know, and there aren't any, I'd be interested to hear, you know, just thinking of that, you know, my linkage is Nixon to Reagan to Newt Gingrich to Donald Trump, right? That's kind of with some other players thrown in, right? Bush, etc. Be interesting to know what Newt Gingrich thinks now. And I know he's on shows from time to time, so it's probably out there somewhere. You know, what does he think about the state of the Republican Party? I assume he would probably say it's fine.
But he was the one who was pushing the contract with America in '93, so I think he's all behind it. He started this shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said he's an integral player. I think he started the congressional side, and I think Nixon started Nixon. What he did, easier to ban books and fix mass unemployment. Absolutely true, Tim. Nixon, his legacy, and he did some good things. I mean, I despise Richard Nixon. Every time he came on, I protested against him at any chance I got, in college. However, what he did is he changed the complexion of politics in America when he made Southern Democrats Republicans.
Right.
Prior to that, they were Democrats. Now, the Democratic Party had a problem because they actually called them Dixiecrats. So you had the Southern Democrats and then your Northern Democrats. But in general, they were Democrats, so you can get some things. Now, of course, it's reversed. But again, as we see states change, at least at certain levels, like right now, Georgia is a blue state as far as the Senate is concerned.
Right.
But it's a red state as far as its own state government is concerned and the House of Representatives members that they send.
Right.
And the presidential vote. But as Atlanta continues to grow, and it will continue to grow, in general, that will be more minorities and more affluent people, right?
And as that happens, the Republicans will do everything possible to eliminate that.
Correct. And that's where we come down with voting restrictions. And that's why it's so important for all of us to stay on top of our individual states, just to make sure, maybe you can't stop, but just be aware of it and see what you can do. Okay, kids are smarter than you think. I read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer as a kid and was appalled by the racism, but I knew it was a product of its time. No literature should be banned from schools. Veg, that's it, right there. I think there's certainly, let's put it like this, that would be a good reading test. That'd be a great reading test at, I don't know, maybe 11th grade, 10th grade. Have kids read Huckleberry Finn and then ask them how is racism displayed in that book, right? You'd understand if they could read. You'd understand where they stand. You know what I mean? Because it's clear. I mean, the whole idea was Mark Twain was one of the great satirists, maybe the greatest. I'll go out and say he's the greatest satirist America has ever known. Mark Twain was all that and a bowl of cherries on top of it. I don't think there's anybody who's equaled in American literature. Now, Brian, we're coming into a new week, and you always keep up. Notion of banning books fucks me off. Yep. When I was younger, I remember bans on the likes of William T. Burroughs. Yeah, Naked Lunch, of course. The word naked is what does it. I mean, there's other things in the book. He was a junkie and that kind of stuff too. But Naked Lunch. The one that gets to me, it's my favorite book. If I had to say longest favorite book, is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. And that is banned because it has witchcraft in there. But it doesn't. They're really angels. I mean, it's just so stupid, right? So yeah, we all have our favorites that get banned. But Brian, you keep it like what's worrying you next week? Do you see anything coming up that
well, I can see that the debt crisis is what.
Well, I talk about that a little bit. I'm going to defer to your economic expertise there because
well, we all know that the Republicans are hypocrites. I mean, never have any, congressional party members voted as a whole against raising the deficit. I mean, if it wasn't for raising the deficit during World War II, we wouldn't have had the military equipment to supply the Lend-Lease Act, our own equipment, and the inflation rates were really low. So what's going on here is they want to tank. They're almost like a sports team that's trying to do poorly so they can get their best pick. And that's essentially what the Republicans are doing. They know they can't. If the election is going to pan out the way it is now with the economy's not bad. I mean, Biden has done his job. He's kept the gasoline prices low, and they're upset about that. They'd like to see the prices higher. They really would. They want to see this thing tank right before 6 months before the election, right, and that's the way you're going to do it. So this way, and then as you said, they're probably going to blame Biden. This way, Biden's got to keep ahead of this.
No problem.
Well, he will. The question is, who's going to be more effective at, being able to transmit the idea that this side's wrong about this. This is something that's.
And that's where we get.
It's simple for you and me, but for the next person, it's not, and it really is that simple.
And that's what I find interesting. As I said, I think divided we stand, polarized country. Trump, not Trump, right? And by not Trump, it's Biden because he's there. Even if you're a Sanders person or whomever, you pretty much reluctantly will go with Biden. Now, what I'd like to know is okay, so I'm Joe Average. I mean, I'm not anything special. So if we default, what happens to me? Why should I be worried if we default? If someone asked you that question, how would you answer it?
Well, don't forget the government. First of all, certain services the government provides is a result of money that comes in that you have to have. And you have this big pie of things, whether it's the military or whether it's education, social programs, welfare, Social Security is from payroll taxes, but they're going to need to get money to cover certain services, and they can't cover certain other ones. So would they throw out the military, expenditures? Right. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to go for the poor, and that's why the Republicans don't give a shit. They will say, okay, social services are going to have to be cut. I think what they want is what Manchin wants. Manchin's the one that I think that's driving this thing more than anybody, because he doesn't like with climate change. They want to help the fossil fuel industries. So they want them to roll back a lot of the things that were going to be done, because essentially Biden won on that. No, we wouldn't consider that a victory being environmentalists, but in terms,
it's better than nothing, right?
So I think that's the real danger, where things will get bad. Things will, and not only that. Like, for example, the bond ratings. The United States has never defaulted on paying a bond. Treasury notes. They've all had AAA ratings. So once they can't pay back a bond, that's a problem. It's a problem because people all across the world buy American bonds because they know that it's a safe investment.
Let me. I'm going to play not devil's advocate, but I'm going to play just Joe. I don't understand this. Okay, so why is that a problem? If America defaults on its bonds and its payment, what happens?
Well, a bond is a loan that has to be paid back, and the bond is rated. Well, what if it isn't paid back? I'll give you an example. As I told you, Treasury bonds, savings bonds, all AAA rated. They've never defaulted. They'll always be paid back. People find that safe. But there'll be cities like, for example, Bridgeton may have a bond. I mean, they need a bond it's rated a B, or the country of Greece, the bond ratings were like, B or C. They would maybe give you a high interest rate of 30%, but you didn't know whether they could pay it back. So if you can't pay back a bond, you're not getting your money back. And then the rating is bad, and then all of a sudden the money is not coming in to the country. You see, now it's limiting the country's ability to borrow money, because the part of it comes from the bonds.
No, that's something else that people ask. Well, where does America borrow its money from?
The whole thing is bonds. Bonds is, stocks are one thing, and it's for the rich, but the bond market, that's where the action is, because that's where, because you could be talking about corporate bonds, you could talk about government bonds, but the government, needs to have that money. That's what in World War II, you had the victory bonds. Bonds are extremely important, and they're always paid back. And you could simply, at the very least, you could, print the money. The government still could print the money, wasn't there? But now they're not allowing it to happen.
Why couldn't you just print the money? Why couldn't you just print the money and pay it back?
You can. The problem is the inflation. You can't have too much out there. It's good to have a little bit of inflation. Your son would know this. It's good to have a little bit of inflation because it forces people to spend. But if you have a lot of inflation where it becomes cheap, then the banks are having a problem, because then the mortgages that were done in the past at the lower rates, now they're making less money. So the banks are really, really right. So it creates a huge problem. A
couple of terms that you've used, you hear circling around this. Which do you think is worse for America, high inflation or recession?
Well, I think it's like a question: what's worse, a high inflation or extreme deflation? And I think the worst thing is deflation, and that would be like the Depression. That was worse than inflation. It does hurt the poor with inflation, because the prices go up and they can't afford as much, but it also hurts the rich and it hurts the banks. So it's not so bad for the common guy when that happens. Deflation, nobody wants either one, but you always want a little bit of inflation, because you don't want to have people hold on to money. You want people to spend a little bit. You have to have an economy that's moving. So a little bit of inflation is good. I mean, 1%, 2%, 3%. When it gets really, really high, that's a problem. But deflation, that's when nobody's going to work, and then you'll have nothing. So I think that's what it really comes down to. Now,
and what
I'm sorry. Carter had a time when you had kind of both things happening. Like, they couldn't believe that both things were happening at once. But these people are fucking nuts. I mean, you have literally people like Marjorie Taylor Greene deciding on very complex economic matters. Like, she has to understand the bond market, and you can bet she doesn't understand anything you and I have been discussing tonight. Yet she's going to have the power to vote on that, and then that's going to have an effect on the rest of us. So that's the crime of it all. It is madness. In fact, if I may just show you, it's only a minute long. This is the House Minority Whip. I just want to put it on. Let me put it on first.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. This is Catherine Clark. She's from the 5th district of Massachusetts, and she is the House Minority Whip. So let's listen to her.
I rise in strong opposition to this reckless default on America Act. I've got to say, I see why the Republicans put this together in the dead of night. I wouldn't want Americans to see this plan either. It's the same GOP playbook. Give more to the rich and elite, stick hardworking Americans with the bill, and threaten economic disaster if we don't go along. So why exactly is the GOP endangering American livelihoods? So they can help a few rich friends dodge their taxes. And what's the cost to the American people? Here's just a few. 2,400 Border Patrol agents off the job, 300,000 kids out of childcare, 400,000 families evicted from their homes.
Okay, so that's exactly what we were talking about. They were, what programs are going to be
Right.
taken out. You know, you could take out the school lunches. You could do it. They can do anything they want. You know what I mean? That's the problem. You don't know where it's going to. You know, it's not going to be an F-16 you're going to lose. You know.
1 million seniors kicked off of Meals on Wheels. $2 billion taken away from veterans' health care. That is 30 million doctors' appointments stolen from veterans. It is disgraceful. Mr. Speaker, there is one responsible path forward, a clean, unconditional vote to avoid default, something the GOP did 3 times under Donald
Okay, so
Trump.
we know the Republicans are hypocrites. So I'm not going to go any further what she says because we kind of know this. We know damn well that they would never want this to happen, and Trump himself said it would be. I forget how he put it, but he basically said it would just be unthinkable for anybody to allow us to default. But in this case, I think the default is going to be a tool for them to drive the economy down so they can win an election. And it's just kind of like January 6th. It's just murder.
Let me play, not that devil's advocate question. Okay, so we're going to drive it down. Now, something will have to be done between now and the election, right? The debt ceiling can't. They're going to have to do something, right? Or does it just mean it just it goes?
Well, it wouldn't matter. Let's suppose after June, if we default, if you have bond ratings, don't forget the bonds are over a period of time. It could be a treasury note for 10 years. It could be, you're just a regular, a bond for a year or whatever it is, because there are different types of bonds. But what will happen is that the effect of it doesn't take much for that to just hold on. I mean, I'm not an economist, but the point is that, eventually I guess they would do it because some of their own would be hurt. But I think they're willing to have that happen in the short term just to destroy the economy because they're first of all they're angry with what they're angry with. They're angry with Biden because he opened up the oil reserve and that reduced the price of gasoline. So we sold the prices up at $5 and they were using that left and right. Look at this, Biden.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he brought that thing down. He says, we're going to use the reserve. Now the price is around $3.15. The inflation is cool. The jobs have been coming. They are actually angry. Look, the truth is this is what gets me so goddamn upset, Dave, is that they know this is the right thing in terms of getting jobs. They know that he's doing the right thing. They don't care. We're talking about suffering. This is suffering. This is the ignorant. Now their constituents don't know. They actually, like my cousin, he'll believe that Biden has caused the price of gasoline to go up. That's without a doubt. But the rest, they know better. Josh Hawley, he knows better. The man's, an Oxford or Cambridge, I don't remember, but he's intelligent. He knows. They're just selfish, evil bastards, and they're willing to inflict suffering, and that's it. And they want to win. They want to win.
And what I find interesting is we have this discussion. There's somewhere probably there's two conservatives or two Trumpites having a show like this, saying the same thing but reversing it. You know what I mean? And one has to be true. You can't hold two positions completely opposite. Either something Joe Biden proposes is good or it's bad, right? You can't have both in the objective world. Now you could have the Democrats saying it's good and you could have the Republicans saying it's bad. But like you say, it's still something, and it's something that's always amazed me, and anybody out there answer it too, because this has troubled me for years. I'm still not quite sure how the Republicans can continue to cater to the wealthy, which they do, okay, and yet still come across as a party of the common people. Now, I will say this. I think that's one of the greatest advantages to them of getting the crazy radical right wing. Nobody thinks of them as rich, right? There's no such thing as a rich Aryan, pretty much. And so maybe that helps now. Like, oh yeah, they're with us too, so it must be I've just never understood quite how the Republican Party has been so effective as either limiting the discussion or denying the discussion or disguising.
Well, they shift the blame. It's like blaming the Jews for everything. It's who was it that said, if you just keep telling the lies long enough, it'll turn out to be true. I mean, it's like a Goebbels type thing. But I don't know if Goebbels said that.
I think it was Pinocchio. I think it was Pinocchio as his nose grew longer.
Well, here's is that there's a lot of determinism here. I know you don't like me using that word, but it's just
No, I'm fine with the word. I just
from
disagree
the past. You've got the racism from the past, and it's still we tend to think if this is a new time, and I think this is where you have to think like an African American, where you kind of feel it. I mean, you see it, and you know that the past is still here. It was just the past is too big. It's like this is why we speak English, because we're born in the United States, where we speak.
I think
it's built in.
And also, I mean, even if you talk about historical past, right? I mean, I was looking at we're going to take our grandkids on a civil rights trail in Alabama, Birmingham, Selma, Montgomery this summer. And so I was doing some research on it and looking at it. And it just struck me. I mean, this stuff was still going on in 1965, 1968. I mean, we're not talking about the 1500s, right? Or the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, even the early 20th century. So, again, I think, and you weren't saying this directly, but I think once again, we're going to be really dependent on minority support to make sure that we win the election.
And they're going to do everything possible to limit the minority vote. They're going to be just.
Correct. And again, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter because you could say, well, let's turn out a large vote, and let's turn out an African-American vote in Philadelphia, right? Or let's turn out a large gay vote in New York City. Well, that doesn't matter because their electoral college votes are going to Democrats anyway. It's in those other states, that begin to mount up. And I think, again, it's early, but I'm going to say it now and see how accurate I am. The election will be decided, the presidential election in 2024 will be decided by Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Right. And I would hate, I'm telling you this, the chicanery that goes in the Republican Party, I'll take it a step further and I'll say the election will be decided by the Supreme Court of the United States, and then we're done.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you could buy Clarence Thomas's vote.
Yeah. But Gorsuch, especially Gorsuch, there's something about him. Dave, again, when you say something to worry about tonight, we've seen this tidal wave coming, Dave, and I think you personally, and I don't want to really speak for you, but I think it hit you the night Trump won that in 2016.
No question. I mean, I'll answer that or put that right. I don't care if it makes me look stupid or whatever, naive. I really don't care. There was no way in my mind, looking at America as I thought it was, and Trump as he was, and Hillary with all her deficiencies as she was, there is no way in my mind when on that Tuesday did I ever think, and even as I was watching the results come in, we were in Atlanta, and I'm sitting there watching them, and no, of course not. And I think now it might not be the worst thing, maybe because it was so that we began to fight more. Maybe could you put Veg just back up a minute?
Yeah, it was Herman Goering. Thank you, Veg. I knew it was one of the Nazis.
Yeah, and of course that worked.
It worked.
It really did, and I think it's effective here, which brings us back full circle now around again to CNN, where we started, and Trump's lies. If that is indeed true, and I think there is much truth in it, all right, that becomes the danger of these town halls, whether CNN does it, or Fox does it, or OAN does it, or Al Jazeera does it, or the BBC. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because that's going to give that fact of that lie being repeated again. And but the other thing, at the same time, I'm thinking, like, I really don't know who hasn't made up their mind already with the election.
That's not the problem, though. I think you're right. Everybody's made up their mind. Some people don't have a mind. I mean,
well, well, that's fine. But I'm talking about. Well, it doesn't mean that. I mean, I don't think anyone who's going to vote.
They don't realize.
I'm not.
They don't realize the cancer that they have.
I agree, and anybody who doesn't vote doesn't realize that. Okay, but what I'm saying is, I don't.
And the
think
Democratic
anyone,
message isn't very good too. Like you said yourself, this is the way I would deal with Trump on CNN. I would say,
right.
You put it on the table and we'll cut it off of you. At some point you have to be like that because if that's the only way, and it's a shame because I think Biden and the Democratic Party has tried to play the game, fairly. They play with officials, but the Republicans, there's nothing that will stop them from lying.
And,
it's a country of liars. It's turned into Russia. The Republican Party is no different than the Russian Duma. It is just a goddamn. It's just a pipeline to the top, and they will do exactly what that person wants to do. They're liars. They're liars. They're liars.
Well, you are a Russian expert as you converse with Russians on the weekend.
And I've seen people who are bamboozled by them too. The ones that converse with. Not all of them, but some of them.
Okay. In America, it appears we're a third, and a third, right? It appears. About a third Republican, about a third Democrat, about a third not involved whatsoever. Kind of.
That's the way people are. What's Russia? Old 90%. People are there Republicans who believe in Putin. Young people are against Putin. And then the middle ground are people who fear the government, and that they're as good as on the government side because they'll do exactly.
You won't act out against.
One of the first answers somebody will give is, "I don't feel comfortable," or "I'm apolitical." They're political. They're saying they're apolitical because they don't want to answer the question. They're too afraid to answer the question. It's a sad situation because there you don't have fair elections. They just, that was when Lukashenko was running for, Lukashenko won, but he should have lost in Belarus because they were you just literally saw the videos of people throwing the boxes out of the votes, the votes from the opposition. And that's essentially what, how the hell does somebody get 85, how did Putin get 80% of the vote or 85% of the vote? That's a made up number.
Yeah. I suppose, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, I suppose if everybody was scared and they voted, but in Russia, they wouldn't know how you voted, right? I mean, if you didn't vote, you don't have to vote in Russia, correct?
Don't have to vote. No, you don't have to.
Now, if you voted, they could trace it back, perhaps.
Right. But it doesn't even get that far. They just take the boxes and dump them.
Right.
Be like, well, you saw it when the plot against America. I mean, that was how, when the season ended, like, here you had the body, we have all these Americans of different colors voting, and you're all really excited when you're watching. That's how it should be. And then all of a sudden, the last scene, you see a box and you see the river, and you dump them.
I think maybe I've come back to literature, and that'll be my last comment.
Now they don't just dump it in the river. Now in this country, no, they are desperate, Dave. In my opinion, they are desperate. And you can see it in the country, even in your own neighborhood. People don't, again, because they do not, aside from just a light hello or goodbye, this country is so divided, as you've said, and they are willing to go to any means, and they'll look the other way, and the ones who are afraid will look the other way. We are like the young people in Russia, and yeah.
Do you think, okay, here's one for you. And again, it's totally speculative, and it's obviously don't speculate, so I'm breaking my own rule here. But let's assume that Biden or a Democrat wins in 2024, which can happen, right? Does that lessen, or do you think that would deepen the Republicans' desire to get back in power in 2028? In other words, what I'm asking.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm just thinking.
Do you see any hope for the country moving in a liberal or Democratic direction enough to assure that a Republican cannot win the presidency?
I think you kind of answered. You've answered this before in your own way. I mean, there was some movement in the midterms, but still, they won the midterms.
Yeah.
Republicans won the midterm. You would have thought after January 6th, everybody would have said, "Fuck this." No, I mean, Lindsey Graham, I've had it with this. No, they haven't had it with it. So I think the easy answer is they're going to double down.
That would be.
You see, because I can't give you a Pollyanna answer here because that's the way the religious person would say. You say, something's going to happen.
And I say that as much for myself because I honestly think that I got a little, shall we say, relaxed or comfortable with Obama's election and his reelection. I thought we were much further along. And I think the lesson I learned from that is, no, we're not. You talked
we're not.
earlier.
And that angered and infuriated these very, very people that we don't get along with. They were infuriated. And it was, you can bet during Obama's presidency, they were angrier than hell internally.
But they didn't have anything until Donald Trump comes along.
And people yourself. You've worked with some people that didn't like Obama. You don't have to go into that, but
no. Well, I think, which also means that we have to figure out, we who are concerned about not Republicans or conservative, just the idea of fascists. And I think why do I say? I mean, they are, but also. They are representing, if the polls are accurate, and I question some polls now, America wants abortion. The Republican Party doesn't.
Right.
America wants people to have the right to vote. The Republican Party doesn't.
Well, they don't mind as long as they're the only ones voting, of course.
Well, but I'm talking right to vote for all, right?
Right.
Universal. If polls are accurate, book banning is looked upon askance by the majority of Americans. And so the question becomes, the minority is really ruling the majority. Now, we have the problem, we're not going to discuss it tonight nor ever again, the Electoral College. We all know it should be abolished, and nobody has shown me a way that can happen yet. In the America as we know it.
And why would it? Because it's their cheat. It's like getting something grandfathered in. You've got it. So we have South Dakota and North Dakota get 4 senators.
And I suppose the tragedy of some of this is, and you can't blame it on the forefathers. I mean, they did the best job they could, right? They did their job. If you believe there should have been an America, they created an America.
They did the job, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Now after that, we can go anywhere we want. But I think once it's entrenched, it's hard. I cannot see any way that there'll ever be any meaningful oversight on the Supreme Court. It's too late. Supreme Court justices aren't going to go for it.
Well, let's put it this way, Dave, and here's the sad part. You said you want to talk about something that's going to make you uncomfortable. This will be something that will make you and me sad. Okay, we're roughly the same age, generally the same generation. You and I are older than these people on the Supreme Court, at least these new Republicans.
Correct.
We are older than most of these Republican congressmen and congresswomen coming up. You and I, our universe is going to end. Everything's going to end before this thing can be settled. And I brought this analogy up during 1941 when things weren't going well in Europe. We're not going to see the resolution. We're not going to see the end of the game where, the Eagles score the touchdown and everything turned out okay. We're going to have to live with this the way people lived with not knowing. And even then you didn't know if you were going to win. Because, for example, Germans in 1941, they probably thought they were going to be okay. And they found out when, Dresden was bombed that there is another side and we may get our ass kicked now,
Right.
And they got an unwelcome taste of reality. And of course you have the climate change thing, and maybe I'll say this much: if it is true that these evil forces, and I call them nothing but evil, like the Republicans and what's going on in Russia, if they were to take control and you essentially have a world like a Genghis Khan world, maybe the sterilization of the planet wouldn't be a bad idea, given there's no reason to live that way. I would rather just say I don't want to see it, but all you're going to have is suffering. If we're going to have like a world of Trump, no thanks. He's like, for example, Dave, I'll give another analogy. If somebody before you were born said to you, you're going to live your life and, for 25 years, you're going to be okay. But then you're going to have cancer and you're going to be suffering for 15 years. And after that, you're going to lose your leg. Would you buy that life, and say, yeah, or would you take the choice of, nah, you know what? I don't want that ticket.
Well, it's hypothetical, and you can't have hypothetical. I would still probably take it. My belief, and it's just mine, is you get life, you do the best you can, and you get the hell out. So I would still take it. Would I like it? No.
You have to understand, but not everybody. Well, I'm just saying the reason why I brought up all those nasty things is because while each individual, like you and I, have lived a fairly nice life,
absolutely,
but I would not say that life is good because there are so many other people that have suffered, and I don't know. And first of all, our lives aren't done. We don't know. You just went through a difficult experience.
Well, that's true.
I can't guarantee that my comfort at this moment is going to be okay when I'm 78.
I do think between now and then you should concentrate on growing your hair. I think the biggest
and that's an indicator also as we gray, as we lose our hair. We're seeing the functionality of our body. This is what happens. We are going through sarcopenia with losing our muscle mass. It's just a fact. This is,
that what's interesting about that is that true about societies too? So in other words, America has been top dog since the end of World War II. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Well, before that, I think there was a British Empire, and before that there was a Roman Empire, and before that there were
right. But see, we're so used to seeing that foam #1 thing shaking at the game like USA. Right. It's like when the hockey team won in 1980. There was that chant for USA, and it was it was a very endearing moment. It was wonderful. But then it was like being co-opted, and it was at every event. And you get these obnoxious "America's the best" thing. And I never. This, the exceptionalism thing, and I that's just the most obnoxious thing to do to people. That's like, laughing at your neighbor because they make less money than you. It's just such, and it's not even true, by the way. It's not even true with the exceptionalism.
But a lot of that is buying into the myth. That it's nice to think you're an exceptional country. You're right. I don't find us exceptional. I find us exceptionally bad at certain things.
Right. Yeah.
I find and my thing again, mine is only my personal. I am so disappointed in what we haven't become and what we aren't, and now where we're headed, much more so than I think we're failed opportunities. Things that we could have done much better, that we didn't do. And some of that, then again, you could make the argument if we didn't take over American Indian land and if we didn't have slaves, we talked about that tonight, the country would be different. No question about that.
Well, I'll even go a step further with that too. Is it the religious right movement with the moral majority that helped Reagan out? I know Carter was a born again Christian, but I think when the churches got involved in politics, it helped that movement to go further right because the church is racist in itself.
And something you just said made me think because, of course, at one point it was the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church really was a power equal to any political, and maybe even greater than any political power, right?
Until Hitler came along.
Way back when, right? So it really now it is like a church a church in and of itself might not have the power, but aligned with politics. That's a pretty formidable thing. And as I say, I don't belabor the point, but when
look at the Supreme Court. It's nonsense.
Yeah. Well, Brian, it looks like it's about that time on the
It is.
clock.
It is that time. I want to thank everybody for showing up here.
Yeah. Give some thanks out, and if anybody wants to put last thank yous or comments to family.
We had quite a few people. We didn't. And not at any one time. We had people in and out. Veg, great to see you again. Love the camera you have on your program. I know, Dave, when are you going to buy did you buy an expensive camera? Didn't you?
I bought a $4 camera, man. That was a lot of money.
All right. Okay. Tim's here. Great to see you, Tim. Mooney Reels here. Joey's here. Rudel Zavedno was here. Great to see you, Tim. Of course, Epi Mew from Scotland was here. Trev, good to see you again.
Karen
Karen was here. Gary Peacock, Franz was here. Geez, we got some more people. I know we had some more people. We had the Common Garden here. Bella was here again. So we had a lot of people in and out. If I've missed anybody, my apologies. And I guess we'll have some. Silly Wonka was here. So thank you all. And you know, we appreciate it. I mean, it doesn't matter whether we have 25 people or 100 people. It's not a big group, but it's an important group, you know, because we do commiserate, and it's fun. It's fun. I think it.
All right.
We get some.
So
more.
goodbye.
So anyway, Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And Dave, how you feeling? All right?
I feel great. For anybody who doesn't know why Brian asked that question, 5 weeks ago I had triple bypass surgery, and yeah, I'm getting around very, very well. I'll know more on Monday. Hopefully, they'll start me on cardiac rehab, and I can start training for the Olympics. But we'll see. That's
good. Well, I want to see you in the 100-yard dash. That's where I want to see you.
I'm going to be I'm going to be on the 100-foot walk. That's my
okay.
All right. See you, everybody.
All right, Dave. And I'm just going to shut this off completely. Okay.
I'm going to shut off first.
And no, that's fine. We'll see everybody, and thank you. I guess we're not going to survive this, but go out together. Yeah. See ya.